Watchword, Pride and Prejudice, Secret Files Revealed. Written and narrated by C. Taylor. Edited to meet YouTube guidelines. To read the unedited version, please click the link in the description. Chapter 4. The crossing had been quiet and uneventful. Lizzie cherished the solitude, unable to rest until one more threat toward her dear sister no longer existed. Her warm feelings for the kind captain of the vessel they had used for many crossings allowed her some relief from the confusion of the day, even with him alert and monitoring from the helm. All others of their party had been long asleep. Dressed again in more acceptable female attire, her mind recounted her time from her youth spent on the soil she would soon walk again. The bustle of the theatre, smell of the paints, flurry of the outfits, Jean-Luc, the maître d', charming guests as he assisted them to their seats. His partner, Pierre, preparing cuisine that Delphine himself would have relished, smiling as he slipped small bites for her, each more delicious than the last. It had seemed to her their little band of players was just beyond the reach of the revolution, until it was not. Her family torn apart in one devastating morning. She had only recently been reunited with Jean-Luc. No one else from that time had ever been discovered. They feared there were no others to have survived. The sun breached the horizon. Golden beams reflected the water, and just ahead, the land of her most cherished memories and worst nightmares. Movement along the shore, the regiment that would escort them to the encampment of British soldiers and Frenchmen loyal to the British cause awaited their arrival. Hopefully, they obtained the intelligence needed for this endeavor. Jane approached, linking arms with Lizzie with eyes fixed ahead. Thank you again for all you have done for me. I regret that returning is always difficult for you. Lizzie smiled. I imagine it is also vexing for Mr. Bingley. Jane's smile lessened. He is managing. Lizzie gazed upon her sister, seeing a countenance that had steadily changed over the past few days. You seem to have gained an understanding of him that I do not share. My comprehension of him astonishes me, Jane admitted carefully. His jovial countenance from the assembly, and as demonstrated to our neighbors since arriving at Netherfield, it is to conceal who he is it not? Jane glanced down as she nodded her head. We, all of us, require concealing who we are. Lizzie tightened her hold on Jane's arm. At the very least, you are choosing to align yourself with someone who firmly understands that. Lizzie felt Jane glance behind them, heard movement, and surmised the remainder of their party had joined them. Mr. Darcy has some comprehension, should you choose to align with him. Lizzie smiled. Had you not already heard, I am not handsome enough to tempt him. I am merely tolerable. Did you not just hear we all require concealment? I do not see any reservation in his eyes now that we do not have to pretend we are not who we are. Lizzie did not venture a glance. Mr. Darcy had caused such great confusion for her since their battle at the brothel, she preferred to not face him at all. Lizzie noted the regiment, after a short and private conversation with Mr. Bingley, were courteous with her and Jane. She did not need to assert her ability to defend herself with or without chaperones, as it would seem they were currently with very capable chaperones. Lizzie decided their reinforcements had proven to be of at least some help with their current mission. Her heart, however, was not lightened until they arrived at the encampment and she was once again reunited with Jean-Luc. Her contentment at the reunion was cut short when she was informed he would not be accompanying her to the enemy encampment as previously planned. She would now be accompanied by Mr. Darcy. That cannot be. Jean-Luc is trusted by our specialist, and his word will be enough. Jane spoke with the same calm countenance that was now irritating her nerves. Mr. Darcy also has my specialist's confidence. He will do nicely. Does he even know French at all? Lizzie expressed her discontent to Jane. I have trained from my youth, Mr. Darcy advised in perfect French from his position inside the tent. Lizzie did not relinquish her aversion to the alteration. His French was too perfect. You have the accent of an aristocrat. Can you not sound as low as a gutter snipe? Mr. Darcy's words and manner of speaking matched the description Lizzie had given. Lizzie's confusion of Mr. Darcy continued. That was done very well. A barkeep is needed for this. She was not allowed to finish as Mr. Darcy again matched his words to what was required. One last test. And if he was inebriated? His words slurred, mannerisms unsteady and awkward. The spectacle proved very diverting to Lizzie, and despite her best efforts, she laughed. She noted that Mr. Darcy immediately stopped his performance, face slightly reddened. He had done well, enough to inspire Lizzie's rarely used compassion. If you mistook my laughter for mocking, I apologize. I had not expected such an understanding of French culture or sober reflections of inebriated mannerisms. I must confess I am most delightfully impressed. She hoped her honest assessment of his skill would lessen his current distress. It was the first time she had seen him smile. It was slight, merely a small rise at the sides of his mouth, but the overall effect made his entire countenance so appealing, Lizzie wondered how she ever thought him disagreeable. Jean-Luc assisted Lizzie with her preparations for the needed performance. She shared kind words with her dearest friend as he applied her disguise with his most excellent skill. The man, acquired at the brothel, still unconscious, was transferred to a rig that would normally be used to transport wine barrels, and he was again unceremoniously tossed in. Lizzie perfected her barwench attire and admired Mr. Darcy's barman look, down to his reddened nose and seemingly missing teeth. The whole mission was quickly becoming one of her most diverting. Jane would not let Lizzie leave without a final embrace. This was also by far the most ambitious mission she had ever undertaken, and therefore the most dangerous. As long as French soldiers believed them to be a wench and a barman transporting a deeply inebriated man insisting on being seen by Napoleon, they should be perfectly safe. Either the soldiers would take him and he would be dealt with by them as an enemy prisoner, or he would be turned back to Great Britain, ensuring he was a traitor. They had concealed a small amount of French intelligence on him so that if he was taken, there would be proof he was a spy. Either way, the man would be truly dispatched by the end of the week. Lizzie enjoyed the solitude of the journey to the French encampment. She was not sure what to say to Mr. Darcy, her thoughts so confounded by the man sitting so close to her. She did not even know what to ask to ascertain any solid information of him. Once they were close, Lizzie retrieved the bottles from under their seats. Mr. Darcy took one, and Lizzie made sure to pour a little on each of them so the smell would start telling the soldiers the beginning of their false story. Mr. Darcy took a mouthful and moved it around before spitting it out. Lizzie did the same. Are you familiar with Élysée Lautré? Lizzie asked, far too late to assess an alternative if he did not, unsettled by her oversight. Much to her relief, Mr. Darcy confirmed that he did. Both started singing loud and slurred to enhance their story, each laughing rigorously and swaying to explain why a barman and wench would think such poor judgment as to encroach on a military encampment was a good idea. They were stopped at the perimeter. Mr. Darcy explained that the fool in the back of their wagon had paid handsomely to be brought to this exact place, as there was something of dire importance he needed to share. The guard glanced at the back of the wagon. The disturbing interruption they caused called a higher-ranking officer over to look. The commanding officer glanced in the back. Lizzie saw it, recognition in his gaze. A whispered word was passed to one of the soldiers who left directly, and the officer directed them to stay exactly where they were. Mr. Darcy played the role to perfection. They were in the most dangerous position she had ever experienced, and he was perfectly at ease, as anyone would be who was too drunk to understand their actions or danger. Lizzie laughed and cackled and repeated Mr. Darcy's words as would any ill-educated drunken strumpet who wanted to be part of the conversation but knew little of what to actually say. Mr. Darcy's drunk barman countenance was delighted with Lizzie's wench support of his report, praised her beauty in front of the officer, then roughly grabbed her and pressed her mouth brutally on hers after proclaiming his lust for her support. Directly before his action, she noted the tent the soldier had been directed to, and who stepped out once the soldier had made his announcement. Mr. Darcy was instigating a distraction to confirm to the occupants they presented no threat. Lizzie's mind spun at the contact. Reminded of her persona she pushed against him, he tightened his hold. The tussle authentic to their current ruse, but she was not informed of this part of their play prior to the event. She was also starting to enjoy it far too much. She tried one more time to pull away. Mr. Darcy would not relent. She moved her hand to right below his ribs, dug her fingers in, and pinched hard. Mr. Darcy finally flinched slightly, enough for her to pull back and slap him soundly across the face. She placed it carefully to make it sound louder than it would sting. The soldiers mocked Lizzie's actions, the officers smirked slightly, and the very heavily armed men standing around them saw them as no threat, relaxing their stance and their hold on their weapons. The soldier returned. Walking with him was the man she did not imagine ever seeing. Mr. Darcy noticed at the same time. "Your Imperial Majesty!" They both gasped and moved to step down from the rig to prostrate themselves before their beloved emperor. The officer commanded they stay in the wagon. Napoleon walked to the wagon, did not acknowledge the two drivers in any way, and merely looked over to identify the man lying in the back not moving. He turned to the officer, spoke but a few words, then turned to walk back to his tent. The officer turned to the drivers. "You are to sober this man up. Once he is able to comprehend you, direct him back to Great Britain. He has not yet supplied sufficient information to be welcome to this land." As he spoke, drunk Lizzie nodded lazily, showing discontent with this part of the conversation, but tracked Napoleon from the sides of her eyes. The flap to the tent raised, and he passed through, and Lizzie glimpsed the table inside. The wagon lurched, and she actually nearly toppled over the back of her seat. Mr. Darcy grabbed her leg to steady her, laughing loudly at her, and they started the song again. Lizzie waved the bottle around and swayed exaggeratedly to their song. They continued that way long after they were out of sight of the encampment. At a part of the road that would not allow scouts to follow them without being discovered, Mr. Darcy snapped the reins sharply to increase their speed. "Did you see the table?" Lizzie asked carefully. "I was monitoring the soldier that was dispatched. He opened the tent too widely. I glanced a moment, then took the opportunity to convince them I did not see anything nor cared to. It had to be convincing. I apologize if I was too rough." Lizzie felt her cheeks warm at the memory. "I did not mind the rough. It was the length of the interaction that concerned me. Not being able to ascertain my surroundings at a time of such importance, I cannot support." Mr. Darcy smiled again, that smile that completely altered any concept she had of him. "I'll take that into consideration as we continue our work together." Lizzie was reminded that he and Mr. Bingley were now the reinforcements Mr. Bennet had mandated they have. Jane's specialist seemed to also be agreeable to the arrangement. She considered their competence with dispatching the highwaymen the night before, and Mr. Darcy's skill at appearing authentic with stations both high and low. Their reinforcements were proving to be valuable assets and not the risk Lizzie had feared. Once back at the British encampment, Mr. Darcy ordered their passenger arrested and shared the intelligence that had been seen on the table behind Napoleon, information that could help with the war effort. Lizzie had contented herself to changing into her travel dress, understanding no one would want to hear any information from a female, when Mr. Darcy stopped her. "Miss Elizabeth Bennet, you witnessed the table as well. Is there anything you noticed that I have not yet reported?" The question so confounded Lizzie she knew not how to answer for some time. She reviewed the intelligence Mr. Darcy had already shared, and noticed something amiss. It was the most obvious piece of information she had seen on the table. Certainly Mr. Darcy would have seen it. The map showed they are set to invade Leipzig. If they acquire it, Napoleon would secure needed resources and additional troops to fortify his armies. She watched Mr. Darcy gaze at her as she gave her report, that faint smile showing as she spoke her understanding of what they both saw and what it could mean. The commanding officer nodded politely at Lizzie before turning to Mr. Darcy. "Can you confirm her findings?" Lizzie understood her word was not sufficient to allow an entire regiment to alter their orders. Mr. Darcy, however, once he confirmed Lizzie's report, new orders were quickly organized. Lizzie sighed and readied herself for her journey back to England. She wished her word was enough to convince others of the needed course of action, any needed course of action. It would have made all her previous endeavors much easier. Her nature of executing her plans without Mr. Bennet's consent or approval had been necessitated by it. Her agenda inspired the protective nature of those she would work with, but they hindered their believing nature. Their reinforcements, however, had agreed to every part of her plan. They had intended to execute it without either her or Jane's assistance, but they hadn't altered any part of it. Maybe the reinforcements would prove to be an asset. Again, so confounding were their natures, she still could not conclude to what level of asset they would prove to be. She was not one to easily trust, but neither was Jane, and she seemed to so quickly give her confidence to Mr. Bingley. The journey back to the ship to England had Lizzie contemplating everything she had learned of the two gentlemen. Though it pained her to bid farewell to her dear John Luke, once back on board, she let the brine air and gentle movement of the vessel calm her nerves. Perhaps she should have a little more compassion for her mother. They would rest 3 days at the palace before continuing to Hertfordshire. Jane and Mr. Bingley spent much of that time conversing privately in their lovely gardens. Lizzie spent the same time endeavouring to not see Mr. Darcy at all. An endeavour that proved quite challenging, as he seemed of the same mind as her with whatever she chose. Should she desire to walk the woods around the palace, he would appear on his horse near her route. Should she wish to find some solitude in the library with a book or writing correspondence to either her father, Mr. Bennet, or friends, he required a desk in the same room to work out some management for his holdings, or his sister Georgiana. Mutterings, loud enough for her to hear, were frequent and quite unsettling, the sound of his voice fast becoming very dear to her ears. She needed space, needed solitude to stop desiring his presence. The last night before the entire party returned to Hertfordshire in separate carriages as to not bring scandalous rumour to their small village, Lizzie was called to a small drawing-room by Jane's request. Upon arriving, Jane's specialist was present, along with an archbishop. So thus shocked by those in attendance, she trembled as she made her greeting. Jane's specialist had received consent by his father for her and Mr. Bingley to marry. Not merely that, Lizzie was informed that she was also compelled to bind herself with Mr. Darcy. Her astonishment was so severe that the need to escape was difficult for her to deny. She requested and was granted a moment of privacy with Mr. Darcy. I do not understand what my dear Jane is thinking, but I assure you I will find a way out of this. Jane spoke in hushed tones by a small corner of the room. You would disobey an order from His Majesty himself? You do not understand. The status of my perceived family will already bring shame to you, but my true parentage would bring upon you a humiliation I could not bear. She noticed the very high ranking in attendance in the room, looked to be impatient for their return. Your true parentage? Mr. Darcy asked, no astonishment in his question. Did he already know? My mother was a French actress. I never knew my father. My true status would never be tolerated by anyone connected to you. I will find a way to prevent such a scandal from harming you, I promise. Mr. Darcy's smile, the one that Lizzie was beginning to enjoy very much, shone on his face. That will be a mission for another day. Right now, neither of us can deny the directive we have been given. Will you join me as we promise our Lord to love, honor, and obey? He raised his arm for her to take. Is not the obey part for the bride only? She whispered as they approached the small group. Yes, I believe it is, Mr. Darcy agreed, closing his hand over hers at his arm firm enough that she could not pull away without causing a spectacle.